Good evening. My name is ellection'n. My guest tonight is a prolific Catholic public intellectual, Dr. E. Michael Jones. Dr. Jones, always a pleasure and an honor. Thank you
Always to
for
be here.
accepting the
Always good to
invitation.
talk to you, Alice.
Thank you. It's really nice to know that. So, as I told you before we started the stream, I would like to talk to you about American election, what uh, went on, what has been going on, what are the current results, what do you think has been going on with the ballots and so forth. So for our audience, maybe in Slovenia, that for those that don't know what kind of elections this were, could you please explain us in a very short manner what kind of election in America this were?
So these are known as midterm elections, which means they're halfway through presidential elections. The House of Representatives have to get elected every 2 years. Okay, so that's the type of thing. This is the midterm. The first midterm election after a new president comes in is usually always a reaction against the president. So the classic example was 1992, a huge reaction against um, Bill Clinton, led by Newt Gingrich. And they took over the Congress, and the Republicans took over the Congress, and they did absolutely nothing, nothing. And so this time it was even worse. Okay, this time you had a president that was 100 times worse than Bill Clinton. One catastrophe for America after another, beginning with Afghanistan and going up to the current war in the Ukraine. One kind of blunder after another. And I think what happened is the Republicans felt all we have to do is show up and we'll win. And they started talking about the red tide. And it turns out, no, it's not that simple. Okay, because what happened in the meantime is that Roe versus Wade, the abortion decision, got overturned. And I think this played a crucial role in the election. So, the first thing that happened after Roe versus Wade got overturned is 140 Jewish organizations announced that abortion is a fundamental value. And this set the tone for what was to follow. Now, I grew up in Philadelphia. I went to a Catholic high school that was run by an order of Christian brothers. All around me were Catholic girls' academies run by orders of nuns. Those nuns became feminists. When they became feminists, the girls started acting out sexually during the sexual revolution. When they did that, some of them got pregnant, and when some of them got pregnant, some of them had abortions. Now, this is a fundamental political fact. You cannot understand American politics unless you understand the corruption, the moral corruption of Catholic women that took place over this period of time. Because when you have an abortion, you become a Jew. Abortion is the Jewish sacrament of initiation. How do I know that this Catholic lady has become a Jew? Because of the way she acts, but the most important thing is because of the way she votes. So you're confronted with a situation where you killed your child, you're consumed with guilt. Either you go back to the church, go to confession, say you're sorry, and then go on with your life, or you unite with other guilty women and you create a political movement known as feminism. And that's what happened, and the Democratic Party mobilizes these women. It's one of the main constituencies of the Democratic Party. So if you look at a place like Pennsylvania, which is where I grew up, I mentioned it, this was a contested race. Okay, you had a Jew by the name of Shapiro running on the Democratic ticket, and you had probably a Catholic. His name was Mastriano. His name ends with a vowel, so I assume he's Italian. But anyway, he was the religious candidate. He was the religious right candidate. You had a Democratic candidate for Senate who had a stroke in the spring. He couldn't put two sentences together. He's literally brain damaged. And they took that and they turned it into some type of hero. And he got elected, and the Jew got elected. Now, let's go back to the Jew. Jews, there aren't enough Jews anywhere in the United States to get any politician elected, not even for dog catcher in Kokomo, as I've said many times. So how do the Jews get elected? Well, it's because of Catholic women who have had abortions. They vote for Jews, and this is what put Shapiro into the governor's office in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. The same thing happened in Michigan. You got two women running. The governor, a complete tyrant, COVID tyrant, nearly destroyed the economy. You've got an attorney general who is a Jewish lesbian, and you've got a population of a state that is overwhelmingly Catholic compared to the Jewish population. In every race, it's always the Catholics who decide the election. And in this race, there was an additional proposition on the ballot, Proposition 3, which was an anti-abortion or pro-abortion. It was up for a ballot, and the pro-abortion side won. It's the same thing as in Pennsylvania. The crucial vote in this regard, I just got a guy from Michigan sent me this thing, and they're saying it was suburban women who carried the vote, and then they're saying it was Catholic women who carried the vote. This substantiates what I'm saying. The so-called Catholic women who vote for people like Shapiro and Gretchen Whitmer and the lesbian Dana Nessel are Catholic women who have had abortions. This is why abortion is such a crucial political recruiting device in America. It decides elections.
But I'm playing the devil's advocate, but shouldn't then Republicans pander to Catholic women that had abortions and say that they're for abortion now too?
Well, they do. Sometimes they do, but they're forced into a position where the Democrats have simply taken that position. So the Republicans, whether they like it or not, are forced to take the pro-life position. So the history of the Republican Party is perfidy on the abortion issue. They used to be called Rockefeller Republicans because the Rockefellers were heavily involved in promoting abortion and contraception. So this is the result of this moral corruption is a political juggernaut that the Republicans don't want to address. They don't like this issue, and they didn't have any issue. Let's move away from domestic issues. What is the fundamental foreign policy issue right now? It's the war in the Ukraine. Did the Republicans say the Democrats got us into this damn war and now we're going to get? No, they didn't say that. They're just there was a word for Republicans. It's less of the same. Less of the same. It's a pun on usually more of the same, but now it's less. In other words, we're going to have the same policies as the Democrats, but we'll water it down a little bit and we'll use talk about values and that type of stuff. That's not going to cut it anymore. It's not going to work, and this is proof that you can't just show up and because everybody thinks Joe Biden's bad and expect to get elected. These are powerful forces. You have to take them on directly.
Yeah.
And you have to do this. You have to do this by proposing a concrete alternative in foreign policy and domestic policy. And that's precisely the problem here. So you got a guy like Ron DeSantis in Florida who has taken on the culture wars issues, taken on the homosexual issues, attacked Disney for promoting homosexuality, and became very popular. But when it comes to foreign policy, he's a Zionist. He has signed his life over to the Zionists. And so what is looming on the horizon is Trump 2.0 if DeSantis then becomes president. And Israel, once again, will have an Israel first foreign policy. We have to be able to address these issues. And the fact that we can't means that the Democrats will continue to win and the Republicans will continue to lose.
What do you think about Trump Is he after Kanye West went after Jews, if I may say so? It seemed that even Trump got a bit harder, went a bit harder on American Jews. I remember he tweeted some. No, he didn't tweet it. I don't know if it was on his Instagram or Facebook or wherever where he criticized American Jews of not being grateful enough
Right, right. That's
towards him.
classic Trump. Classic Trump. And so the ADL comes back and accuses him of being an anti Semite. This is the ridiculous, the most Jewish president in the history of the United States, and the ADL calls him an anti Semite because they don't like what he said. This is, he's trying to extricate himself from a mess of his own making. The Israel thing ruined his presidency. He just didn't know how to rein in the Jews. He thought they'd be on his side if he constantly did things for Israel. It turns out they hated him, and they were instrumental in driving him from office. So did he learn a lesson? I don't know.
Do you think that some people analyze Trump as being a populist in the sense that he sensed the will of the people, and that it was their explanation of why he won. He was supposedly he felt the white blue collar worker that was also critical of Jews, but he betrayed the white blue collar worker critical of Jews with some of his actions, didn't he? But if he did
No,
that,
no one, no one has a coherent political program in the United States of America. No one. So if you look at states like Oklahoma, Oklahoma is 100% against abortion. They basically banned abortion from their country, and they're 100% pro Zionist when it comes to foreign policy. Apparently, no one in Oklahoma figured out that the Jews are behind both of those operations. They haven't figured that out yet. That's exactly the situation with the conservative movement in Florida. It's exactly the same. Exactly the same. This is the incoherence of political philosophy in America right now. Someone is going to have to come in and say, look, the only coherent American foreign policy is America first. This is what Trump articulated in the last days of his campaign, and that's why I voted for him. Okay, and then instead of that, we got Israel first, and he handed over our foreign policy to Sheldon Adelson, to three rich Jews who tore up the JCPOA, which was a really stupid thing to do. You know, that's why he wrecked his own operation, because of the incoherence. If you're incoherent, the Jews can play both sides off against the middle, which is what they do with people like this. Someone's got to come up with a coherent understanding of both the foreign policy and domestic policy that will make sense in the way that America first made sense during the 1930s. That means getting out of foreign wars. That means building up the manufacturing base of America again. And that means you now have permission to say the word Jew. You can talk about Jewish involvement in American politics. If we can't do that, we can't do anything. We don't have no power whatsoever.
could it be? I've been reading Nick Fuentes' Telegram lately a lot, and it seems that him and Groyper movement still have at least some hopes in Trump as being um, the lesser evil of anything else. Is there anything to Trump, in your opinion? Is it still something in him that could bring some hope, or at least could we consider him as a tool for America first, or something like that? Is he a lesser evil than, for example, DeSantis or whoever the Republicans are going to run for president in 2 years?
I don't. No, I think it's no. I think in many ways DeSantis is the lesser evil if you're talking about the Republican primary because he doesn't have the baggage, the same baggage. He's a fresh face, uh, but if you're talking about Hillary Clinton, tell me who isn't the lesser evil. Tell me, like Vlad the Impaler. I mean, who would you? Would you? I would vote for Vlad the Impaler before I'd vote for Hillary Clinton. And if I started to waver, all you'd have to do is play that video of Hillary Clinton laughing about killing Muammar Gaddafi. I assume you've seen that video.
Yeah, I saw
I
it.
mean that's enough to make your blood run cold. I mean, how could anyone vote for a monster like that? Look, if you're involved in promoting the killing of innocent human beings in the womb, why wouldn't you kill Muammar Gaddafi? She's a murderer. And this is something that put Trump into office. Now, that being said, there are women out there who will vote if the choice were between Jesus Christ come back to earth and Hillary Clinton. They would vote for Hillary Clinton because of their sins, because of the sin of abortion. That's a fundamental fact of political life in America, and we all have to face up to it.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit it. A couple of years ago, when this video came out, we Slovenes and Europeans at large, we like to think that Americans are stupider and uneducated, broadly speaking. But to be honest, Europeans have been fed this primitive NATO CIA propaganda in which people like Hillary Clinton have been fighting evil forces, and an average European, a normie European, still thinks that okay, when he sees Hillary Clinton laughing after they killed Muammar Gaddafi, they think, yeah, she's laughing and she should be laughing because they obviously killed an evil person, because everything American native. I'm not trying to say American because it's debatable what this term means, but at least this NATO, CIA, Zionist propaganda that we in Europe have been fed
Right,
only, if I may say.
right. So tell me about Slovenia. I hear there were big demonstrations in Czechoslovakia. I'm sorry, the Czech Republic, where they want to make peace with Russia. They don't want to any more sanctions. They don't want their government to get further involved in the war in the Ukraine. Is this widespread? Is it in Slovenia? Do you have this anti-war movement in Slovenia as well?
Very minor. It's couple of nationalists. It's couple of nationalists or sovereignists or traditional Catholics, maybe Orthodox Christians of Serbian descent or something like that. But our left wing is supposed to be pro-Russian because of the communism and so forth. They had connections from past times of communism, but when Volodymyr Zelensky came to our parliament, and we have a majority left-wing government right now, no one protested, no one had anything against it. They all clapped, there, they all applauded. It's in Slovenia it is a little bit mm, different than in America in the sense that it's the other way around. I heard that the Republicans, who were supposed to be a little bit, at least some dissent voices against the war in Ukraine, they applauded to Zelensky also in your Congress, that he got standing ovation from Republicans. I heard this. I don't know if this is true, but yeah, in Slovenia, the left wing is supposed to be pro-Russian, but it has no guts, at least it seems so, and it is also um, ran by NATO, CIA, Zionist forces. They just act out as if they were some alternative. And the right wing in Slovenia, the so-called right wing, is NATO right wing, and it shows. How does it show that we have a NATO right wing? Uh, our right wing loves, for example, Kosovo, Albanians, and hates Serbs. We had we had some
Oh, it's
problems
like
with
it's like
immigration.
Croatia. It's like Croatia then.
Yeah,
You have
similar, very very similar.
this ancestral animosity against the Orthodox, with no sense of how this can be manipulated by the CIA
Yeah,
to break up Yugoslavia or something like that. Yeah,
yeah,
look,
and it's mostly uh,
there is
um,
no anti-war movement here. None. Absolutely none. There was a small anti-war movement when Bill Clinton attacked Serbia. I mean, I stood on a bridge and we protested. It's disappeared completely. There's no one in Congress. Ted Cruz says, wide bipartisan support for this war in the Ukraine. Well, this is why you lost. This is why the Republicans lost, because there is no representation of this America First nationalism that says we should not be involved in these foreign wars. We should have broken up NATO in 1991. It has done nothing but enslave the European people and foment war. And now we've reached the point where we're attacking our allies by blowing up the pipeline. Apparently, the Brits did it. Apparently, Liz Truss said it's done. So Blinken, obviously, the Brits are the lapdogs of the Americans in this regard, so there's no big difference. But look at the Germans, pathetic Germans. They're all saying, "Well, we have to sacrifice." No, you don't. Why don't you
no,
make peace with Russia? Did you hear anything about Schultz's visit to China?
yeah, yeah. I saw they didn't shake hands and anything, and it was weird. It was bizarre.
Because I'm hearing that some people are saying that that was to basically ask China to be an intermediary so that they can make peace with Russia. That may be wishful thinking on the part of the people who made the report. That it's too logical for a green to do something. Actually, Schultz is SPD, he's not a green. But what happens when the German people lose their religion? They become fanatical about other political causes like Nazism or now like the green environmental ideology, even though it makes no sense whatsoever. The Greens are now opening up coal mines
Yeah.
rather than say to the Americans, you blew up our pipeline.
It's bizarre how Germ. I mean, if I look at the Eastern Europe and Middle Europe and also the Western Europe, it seems that America in '90s America had was appreciated at least by the countries that went through communism, for example, and all practically all the respect we had for America went through the roof now
Right,
because of the involvement
right.
in
I, I,
Ukraine crisis.
I traveled all across Poland in 1990. And I look like, I guess I look like an American because people would run up to me and they want to kiss my hand. I had to keep fighting them off. Don't kiss my hand. Don't kiss my hand. And they wanted to kiss my hand because I was an American, and Americans were the greatest people on earth because we had just rolled back communism. Well, America pissed that away over the course of the last 30 years. They pissed away enormous amounts of goodwill, not only in Europe, but in Russia as well. I have grandchildren who are Russian because of that moment in history when when the Cold War ended in America, and my son went over there and met a woman and married her in Vladivostok. That's all gone. That's all gone. That was a moment of opportunity and was ruined by the Jewish looters from Wall Street led by Jeffrey Sachs. and
Yeah,
their manipulation of Boris Yeltsin.
they created Vladimir Putin, and they created the Ukraine crisis. They devastated Russia in the 90s, so they created Putin by that. And through years, it's obviously that it was totally constructed by Jewish American Jewish looters, as you
Right.
articulated
Yeah.
in Ukraine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for example, our right wing is obviously has this NATO narrative going on that it's actually for peace to be for prolonged war because you can only be for the Ukraine win in this war, and because if you're not, you're for an evil force to win here. It's ludicrous, but it's our right wing is totally non intellectual. There's no intellect in the Slovene right wing. It's obviously it was constructed by NATO and CIA and their Jewish leaders.
Yeah.
It's obvious.
No, it's sad. It's sad. But there seems to be real resistance in the Czech Republic. Do you agree with that? I mean, I saw the
I
pictures of Wenceslas Square. I mean, that's a big place, and it was full. And they were demanding that the prime minister step down. They're demanding peace with Russia. I mean, was that an illusion or was it real?
I'm not sure. I have to admit I don't know, but I would be glad to if that happened. It would make me happy because this Visegrad connection of ex Iron Curtain countries that had their beefs with Russians because they had beefs with Soviets, and Soviets, we know who Soviets or Bolsheviks or communists were. I'm not sure how based these Visegrad countries actually are about who the Bolsheviks actually were, if they are aware of the fact that it wasn't the Russians that made all the evil. It was the small hats that that did it. I'm not sure how based they are about it.
No, I don't know either. I don't know. I had contacts with Michal Samin. He was leader of the Civic Forum, which was basically there to overthrow communism. And then he just got, basically he felt he was betrayed by NATO and had this something imposed on him. And as far as I know, he's dropped out of politics. I haven't heard from him since I've been there. But I mean, in '68, the '68 was the Prague Spring, and that's when Dubček came to power and basically was opposing the whole Russian communist, the imposition of communism on his country, and that led to the invasion in '68 when the Russian tanks rolled through Prague. But now they seem to have gotten over that and want the Russians back. better, better than the Americans, better than Hillary Clinton.
uh,
This,
I,
this is the
I
this
I
is the this is the tragedy of these small countries. It's the tragedy of Iran right now, where the CIA is now trying to overthrow the government by getting all these women to take off their hijabs, and the Iranian people are confronted with anarchy, CIA feminist anarchy on the one hand, and brutal mullah Islamic repression on the other, and forced to take a position when they're both wrong and both counterproductive.
Yeah, I agree. I have to be honest. I'm a little bit black pilled. I have been black pilled for a while now. It seems that Czechs that used to hate Russians and now want them back is based on not on intellectual reflection on how's the states of affairs, how's the geopolitical states of affairs in the world, but it's only based in materialism and hedonism. They're afraid they won't get their gas and their food and so forth, and they get it as far as it goes. They get it that they have to be pals with Russians, but that's only the surface of that they could, in my opinion, they could easily be bought again when the crisis goes away and the NATO comes on horses as a savior or something like that. I'm not very optimistic about uh, the intellect of this all of our small countries in Eastern Europe or Visegrad or
Yeah.
I'm really not optimistic. I wanted to ask you about this Iran crisis and the burqas and so forth. I remember uh, our grandmas in Slovenia when they went to the downtown or they when they went to the church, they um, they had their heads covered, and this is like 50 years ago. So um, it's not that drastic of a thing for women to have their heads covered even in our world, in our civilization. I don't know how it was in America. I don't know,
Yeah.
50 years.
If you go to the New York Times, uh, the fashion ads in, let's say, 1960 for men, you see a man wearing a really nice suit, and every man wore a hat. No man would consider going outside without a hat on, and that's the men. And the
This is
same
nice.
thing was true of the women. No woman would go outside unless she had a hat on. This was just accepted. So the problem here is that was no one enforced it. It's just what people did. Abraham Lincoln said, no, there's no law that prohibits men from wearing bonnets, which is the woman's hat. But men don't wear them because it's custom. So what you see here now is the Islamic Republic comes to power in 79. There's this outburst of religious fervor and national sentiment together. There's no distinction. There's no separation of church and state or mosque and state. And they're full of enthusiasm for the new revolution. And they show their piety by getting dressed up, wearing the hijab on their head and the chador, the black dress. Uh, this took on religious and political meaning immediately, and it never stopped having political meaning. So now you got the question where the women are suddenly tired of doing this, uh, but you can't allow the change to take place because now, if you remove the hijab, it's a revolutionary act. The mullahs, if they say this, it's absolutely true. It is not something trivial. It is not something neutral. It is a revolutionary act, and the government has to deal with it as a revolutionary act, which means at this point, basically gunning down people in the streets. And now it's escalated. I don't know whether you've seen this, but now young men will walk down the street and they will knock the turban off the mullah. This is an escalation of revolution. And this is being fostered by the CIA. They got involved. The CIA, the first place they ever got involved in was Iran in 1953. Then they created the playbook. They tried it again in 2009. It failed because it was repressed. It will probably be repressed this time, but the next time it may not. And so this is the time, I think, where they need to make some type of radical move. And what I'm saying is, I think they're going to have to admit that the revolution ended in 1989 when the Ayatollah Khomeini died. And then the problem got compounded by the fact that the supreme leader introduced birth control at that point and created feminist revolutionaries by handing out birth control pills. Because now you had this contradiction between the hijab and the birth control pill. So what is the purpose of the hijab? To protect female virtue, feminine virtue. so that they don't become objects of sexual appropriation when they're in the public square. At the same time you're doing this, you're negating the fertility of, which is the very essence of the femininity you're trying to protect. And the women are now stuck with a contradiction, and they don't know what to do. They don't know how to resolve the contradiction. So I had an Iranian friend. I sent him the article I did on the hijab crisis. We discussed it, and he said, basically, there's a saying in Iran right now, I've got a saw up my ass, and it hurts when it goes in, and it hurts when it comes out. And that's the situation. They have two equally repugnant alternatives, and they don't know how to resolve it. So I think personally that the only way to resolve it would be for the supreme leader to step down, to abdicate, appoint Ahmadinejad, President Ahmadinejad, as the president, and he will come to power and create a new form of republic. That's the way the French do. Every once in a while, they have a new republic. I think they're up to the fifth republic. It would be similar to European elections, where like the party in England loses its power, and so it's replaced by another party. This would be a way of doing that, but they'd have to ensure that Ahmadinejad, the first priority that he'd have to enforce is to prevent a revolution. He'd have to go on and say, look, we cannot allow the CIA to take over our country. That is a non-negotiable demand, and we are going to do whatever it takes to preserve that. But at the same time, we have to regroup and come up with a more plausible, viable form of government and prevent this kind of theocratic overreaching that took place when the supreme leader intervened in the political process and told Ahmadinejad that he wasn't allowed to run for president. The clergy should not have that power. They're out of their depth when they start doing that, and it causes contempt for the government when he does it.
Speaking of that, how should we de I don't know how what kind of a term I would use, but what should we do to semitize our women, if I may say so? I don't know what's the term.
De-Jewify the women. There is one solution.
Yeah.
De-Jewify the women. That's the point we began with. The answer is very simple. You have no problem here. It's called the Catholic Church, and it's called confession. And you have to have some type of moral reform. You have to repent of your sins. Now, this is easy in Europe. I said the same thing in Ireland when I was on Gemma O'Doherty's program. It's easy for you guys. Iran is tough. What are they going to do? That's a really tough situation because they have to create these structures ab ovo from the beginning. But the solution to the problem with women right now is repentance. If you had an abortion, don't make a sacred cause out of the fact that you killed your child. That's a bad idea. You will regret it. The only solution is to say, I'm sorry, I did it, to make use of the Catholic Church, to return to the Catholic Church, and then start your life all over again on a sounder foundation. That is what has to happen across Europe. Anywhere. There's no exception to this in Europe. Germany is a classic example of where this has to happen. The church is so weak in Germany that it may not. The church in the Czech Republic was weak. It's run by Jews, just as the way the church in Germany is. The church, Universal Catholic Church, is run by Jews at this point. We have to break away with that. We have to say, reclaim our identity, our national identities. That's easy for you too. Much easier for you than for an American. I mean, you all speak Slovenian. If that doesn't unite you, what's going to unite you? That's a completely like Masonic insider language that joins all these people together. That's exactly the advantage that Putin has in Russia right now. When he gives that speech and he appeals to the Russian language, to the Russian people who belong to the Russian Orthodox Church and are all children of Mother Russia. That's why Russia's going to win, because they can mobilize those forces. That's what's got to happen in Slovenia. It has to be some type of religious reform, a return to the Catholic roots of Europe, because that's the only thing that's going to heal a woman who has had an abortion, which is the fundamental force driving politics in America right now.
Well, for about Slovenia in 91, I was 10 years back then. I remember when we got through independence from Yugoslavia, Slovenes were considered the majority Catholic. We were even considered a Catholic nation, although we went through 50, 60 years of communism that supposedly suppressed the Catholic Church and Catholicism and so forth. But it wasn't for long, maybe 10 years, maybe the 21st century began, and we weren't able to count ourselves anymore as Slovenes or Catholics and so forth, and now it's merely impossible to claim that Slovenia is still a Catholic nation. Even nominal Catholics
Okay,
are lost.
I understand that. The same thing happened in Ireland. There's no different than what happened in Ireland. And I said, now what you're starting to see is beneath the velvet glove of sexual liberation, there's the iron fist of political control. So what did Civiltà Cattolica say in 1890? If any country rebels against its Catholic identity, it will be ruled by Jews. Do you like being ruled by Jews? Do you like that? Even though the Jews let you screw whoever you want, is that wearing thin right now? Is that starting to wear off? The initial glow of liberation from the moral law? Are you starting to realize it's really another form of slavery? This is the conversation that has to take place across Europe right now. I think that Gemma and I are having some success in Ireland. And the main reason I say that is because Ireland just passed hate crimes legislation. And the first lady that's going to suffer under this law is Gemma O'Doherty. And I know that because the lady they've already written the article, and the lady who is leading this charge is Heidi Beirich. She's the lady who went after me 15 years ago when she was head of the Southern Poverty Law Center. I said, Gemma, you don't need any more proof for the effectiveness of what you're doing, other than the fact that you've been singled out and they're going to punish you. You only get flack when you're over the target. And you're going to have to stand up and be an example to the Irish. What I'm saying to the Irish, what I'm saying to the Slovenians is the same thing I'm saying to the Irish. Do you have a little bit of buyer's remorse now? A little bit of buyer's remorse about abortion now? Do you still think it's such a great idea to be able to have the so-called freedom to kill your children? What kind of freedom is that? And I'm saying, if you're starting to have regrets, I know an institution that's willing to welcome you back, and that is the Catholic Church, where you will regain your identity, because you will not have it unless you go back to your Catholic roots. And I'm saying the same thing is true of Slovenia.
It's interesting when we're talking about Ireland. I still remember when Ireland, it was 10, 15 years, maybe 20, I'm not sure, that Ireland was considered still a very strong traditional Catholic nation. And in that time, 15 years ago, or maybe less, maybe more, the so-called multinational corporations like Google and so forth came into Ireland, and it was promoted by libertarians, even in Slovenia, as a very good thing, and they were promoting even in Slovenia, why aren't we so smart as Irish people? We should lower our taxes, and all the Googles and Twitters and so forth would come to Slovenia, and it would be a gay disco, to put it in your words.
Yeah, the gay disco.
The gay disco started, and Ireland is suddenly not a Catholic nation anymore, and it correlates very strongly with this libertarian bullshit about open borders, low taxes, free markets. Although I know that multinational corporations and so forth are far away from any free markets. Of course, they are crony capitalistic and so forth and so forth. But yet, I've been telling this to our conservatives, our right wing people that still fancy this Jewish capitalism or whatever it is. I've been saying to them that capitalism has been able to ruin traditions. Communism hasn't been wasn't able for 50 years.
Right,
The capitalism ruined it in 10 years.
right.
And the
It's much more.
capitalism is
It's
the
much more
leading
destructive.
force.
It's
Yeah,
much
much
more
more
destructive than
destructive.
communism. Yeah, you're right. Google was the Trojan horse. And the Irish pulled this Trojan horse into their city, opened the gates and pulled the Trojan horse in, and then they went to bed. And guess who came out? Well, I showed this article to Gemma. It turns out they've got all these Israeli psychological warfare operatives now working for Google. Oh, who knew that? Who knew that it was Israelis from that project? What is it? Building 2,800 in the Negev desert. So now they're running Google. Well, then you've got that ancestral Jewish animosity against these traditional Catholic cultures, all disguised by the fact that it's Google and hey, it's just information. And what do you got against blah, blah, blah? No, they're waking up. The Irish are waking up. They're starting to see, and if I pray that Gemma is not going to be persecuted, but if they do go after her, there's going to be a huge reaction. The scales will fall from the Irish eyes when Gemma, if ever Gemma gets persecuted like this, if Gemma goes to jail, the scales will fall from the Irish eyes and they will understand that they've been conquered by a predatory group of aliens who now are determined for their extinction.
Do you have any hopes in Elon Musk and his takeover of Twitter?
No, no. I mean, he folded like a cheap suit within 48 hours. As soon as the ADL showed up and yanked his chain, he folded like a cheap suit. So, no, I have no great hopes. Don't put your hopes in princes or billionaires. It's a bad idea.
Yeah, I don't know his history. That the Jews basically created his industry and subsidized him for decades before Tesla went big, and then they're subsidizing his SpaceX, and it's it's really naive from some conservatives to put so many hopes in a guy that voted Democrats for his whole life, and now
Well,
he was
he should
supposedly.
pay attention to what happened to Kanye and Kyrie. Kyrie, sorry, my Catholic upbringing is coming out here. Kyrie, Kyrie Eleison.
uh, okay, let's put Kyrie aside for a little bit and talk about him a bit later. Kanye West is a little is a much bigger character. I do believe. Is he a positive thing, sort of say, in your opinion? And he's
Yeah, Kanye is a Christian. He's a serious Christian. He's like a typical black Christian who has faith, but hasn't figured out that you have to act in a certain way when it comes to relations with the opposite sex. That's the Achilles heel of the black population, you know, where they're faithful Christians, except that they can't get the sixth commandment down. So as a result, you have like 80% illegitimacy among the black population. And as a result, people like this get promoted way above their level of consciousness, And then they suddenly realized that they're being controlled. This is what he brought out about his personal trainer, that Jew, Harley Pasternak. That was incredible. And if you want my humble opinion, I think the ADL created the Kyrie crisis to distract everyone from what was going on with Kanye, because that was devastating information. It's not without
Yeah.
precedent. It's not without precedent because in the 1950s, it wasn't personal trainers. They were called psychiatrists at that point, and they had exactly the same role of basically shooting their clients up with drugs and making sure that they were docile and under control. The classic example of this was Marilyn Monroe, who simply could not shake free of this vicious Jewish psychiatrist that was determined to control her life and may have ended up killing her. We don't know the circumstance. We know that she had a lot of drugs in her body when she died. Whether it was an overdose or whether someone killed her is, that's an unresolved issue at this point.
But why were they afraid of her? Because she was so famous and she could have had some influence, anti-Jewish influence on people.
Could be. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know exactly. The story is that the Kennedys were afraid that she was going to start talking, and they were involved in her murder. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just saying. What about what was the guy, the singer who died mysteriously in his bathtub? What's his name?
Oh, the
Aaron Carter. Aaron
Carter.
Carter. Yeah, I don't know. That sounds suspicious to me because he wanted to talk to Kanye. He tweeted Kanye the day before, wanted to talk to him, and then suddenly he dies in his bathtub. Did he have a really deep bathtub? Was like his bathtub 20 feet deep or something like that? I don't know. It sounds
Yeah.
suspicious to me, but it's over now. We'll never find out.
Although his name is also so suspicious, I have to admit it. His name's Aaron or something like that.
Aaron, yeah. He
Aaron,
apparently
yeah.
had a lot of experience with the Jewish agent Perlman, who was also a pedophile and exploited his clients sexually. Maybe that was the story that was going to come out. It could have corroborated Kanye's story. Anyway, I think that Kanye's story disappeared because of Kyrie's story, and which is basically much to do about nothing. I mean, why is the ADL going after him? Because he tweeted something? He didn't say anything about the movie. He tweeted a movie which was available on Amazon.
It's appalling to me how this ADL it still has so much power over politics or over politicians that nobody has been able to speak against them in any real sense of the word. Okay, they've been, even Ben Shapiro has been saying that they are a vicious left wing organization, but
well, another Jew
yeah,
case just came. Another just came out. Lyle Leibovitz or something like that wrote in an article in the Tablet saying the ADL has to go. The ADL is bad for Jews. That's what he's saying, and there's a sense in which it's true. It's the little Jews, like you antagonize. You go after Kyrie and Kanye, and you make all these black dudes angry. And then suddenly they're walking down the streets of Brooklyn and they see this guy with his big black hat and his payas. Maybe there'll be violence because of the ADL. The ADL is provoking violence, black Jewish violence. That's kind of the gist of what he's saying. He's saying that the problem began with when Jonathan Greenblatt took over the ADL. He's a Democrat, and he basically made it a subsidiary of the Democratic Party, which alienated a lot of the neoconservative Jews. But the more important case is it's the little Jews who are going to suffer. The little Jew who goes to the supermarket and suddenly confronted by some black Hebrew Israelite who's really annoyed at the way his Jewish landlord is gouging him, and the thing that pushes him over the edge is the way the Jews are treating Kanye and Kyrie.
Wait till they all find out that who were the slave merchants
They
or
know
at
that.
least
That's part of
they.
their culture. The black Minister Farrakhan and the black Muslims in Chicago have told this story. This is all part of their of that culture, and now it's being proven true. This is what's happening now. It's causing the collapse of the Black Jewish Alliance, which was one of the most powerful revolutionary forces in modern American history.
This is what I found out. It's very similar between the so-called American right-wing conservatives, Republicans, and so forth, and our NATO right-wing party. They all try to put through or promote this ludicrous notion that the left wing is actually anti-Semitic. The right wing in Slovenia is really trying very hard to promote itself as a. They're not even hiding that they are pro-Zionist, pro-Israel, pro-Jewish. They're really trying very hard to show that the left wing is somehow anti-Semitic, and it's the same thing with Farrakhan in America. The right wingers, the conservatives, are trying to say that because Farrakhan is somewhat welcomed in the Democrat Party, that they are anti-Semitic. But this is not true, isn't it?
It's a divide and conquer strategy. You should just announce it. Let's have a moratorium in Slovenia on the word anti-Semitism. Let's just have a moratorium. We'll agree that we won't use this word anymore. It's totally meaningless, and we can have discussions about Jews without the fear of someone immediately standing up and denouncing you as an anti-Semite because you're talking about something that's obvious. Obvious. Like, how can you not talk about the Jews now in American politics when you got this Kanye and Kyrie conflict going on right now? You can't keep this hidden anymore. We have to be able to discuss it openly without this fear of some guy, some commissar showing up and banning the discussion by claiming you're an anti-Semite. You're not allowed to talk about this.
Yeah, did you see the conversation between Candace Owens and her boss, commissar boss Ben Shapiro
Ben
about
Shapiro.
Kanye?
No, I missed that. What did he say? I was too
Well,
busy listening to Ben Shapiro give the pro life talk here in South Bend, Indiana. I missed that. What did he say?
well, I waited. I waited for days, maybe even for weeks, because Candice was at the beginning with Kanye. With that, they had that those shirts, White Lives Matter.
White Lives Matter on their shirts. Yeah, she was
Yeah,
right
that's
there, standing next to Kanye.
and she is even she didn't explicitly critique him, and it obviously bothered Shapiro. And I saw his talk on some university a couple of days ago, and he said it that if she said something like Kanye did explicitly, she would be fired immediately. And he also wrote something to her at Twitter. No Twitter. He's not on Twitter. Somewhere or on Gap, or I'm not sure. I can send you the conversation later. And he he said to her that she was retweeting or something like that, some anti-Semite, and this anti-Semite was a Jew also, and she actually got mad at him in the sense that she wrote that he could have called her, that he has her number, and told her about that. She didn't know that that was a notorious anti-Semite, as the Shapiro said. And it's funny. We will see what this will bring. Do you think that she's a potentially potential free thinker that will in time go away from daily
Oh
wire.
yeah, what does this do when you suddenly you wake up to the reality of the situation, which is that I didn't know this was an electric fence, and if I touch it, I'm going to die. She was the whole point of being conservative is to avoid all of these questions, and you have this kind of lingua franca that allows you to bitch and moan about things without ever dealing with the real issues. Well, she was probably sincere in her belief that she was a conservative. And now she touches the electric fence. She touches the third rail of American politics. She gets a tremendous shock, and maybe it'll wake her up to the reality of the situation. That's the great thing about reason. You can learn from incidents like this, and you can correct what you're doing.
Maybe the team black will take us into the new dimension of public discourse. Maybe Candace and Kanye
Well, we're
can.
already on our way there. We're already on our way there, and she probably can't conduct this on the wire, can't conduct this discussion on the wire because Ben Shapiro created that as a way of disguising the fact that it's run by Jews. The point of the conservative movement is to render the Jew invisible by dealing with categories like left and right rather than the real categories. And that's, I think, what his job is as the conservative pundit. He occupies that neck of the woods. Basically, he came to South Bend, Indiana to give the Right to Life talk, never mentioned the 140 Jewish organizations. I had to bring it up in the question period. He immediately shouts me down and says, no, that's not Jewish value. I said, well, Ben, 140 organizations? Why isn't
Mhm.
it? Who are you to say that these people are not Jews and not telling the truth about their religion? You're just one guy against
He,
140 organizations.
do you think that he's a little bit delusional? I mean, he uses obviously he uses the no true Scotsman fallacy in the sense that he always says or would say that these are not real Jews,
That's
although
right.
the majority of them are secular and pro-abortion and so forth. And he seemingly wants to believe that the real Jews are only the Orthodox conservative against abortion Jews like himself, although they're the minority in the Jewish community. And he obviously, I remember a couple of years ago, he was asked what he thought about Noam Chomsky and John Leibowitz. What was that comedian or stand-up guy or Tonight
Jon
Show?
Stewart. Jon
Yeah,
Stewart.
and he answered something like that. I don't care about secular Jews. They're ethnic Jews. I don't care about them. I only care about religious Jews, and Judaism is for me religion. And he obviously lied or he changed opinion because why would he be such a fervent Zionist if Israel is obviously a
Right.
secular
That's
country funded
right.
by socialists?
Right. No, I think he's being disingenuous, and I said this in the article I wrote. There was a guy by the name of Ginsburg who wrote a book called Fatal Embrace, and he talked about the Jews, uh, neoconservative Jews, and he said if you get them in private, they kind of laugh at the goyim, uh, and how they're leading them along by pretending to be concerned about social issues. But when they're in private, they're just using them to advance their agenda. Well, I think that's true. That's what Ben Shapiro is doing. He's a commissar who's appointed himself to the commissar for the Right to Life movement. And that means eliminating the most important development in the last 50 years from the discussion. Namely, the 140 Jewish organizations have said that this is a fundamental Jewish value. That is new. That hadn't happened before at all. And he comes, gives a speech, doesn't even mention it. And when I bring it up in the question and answer period, he just dismisses it as, no, they're not real Jews. Well, wait a minute. Who's the real Jew? You're the only Jew who's the real Jew? Who made you?
Human,
Who made you the Jewish Pope? He's acting as if he can excommunicate any Jew
yeah.
that disagrees with him. That's ridiculous.
Dennis Prager is also a Jew. They're the real Jew. The
Yeah,
only two real Jews are him and Dennis Prager.
yeah,
And an honorary Jew, Jordan B. Peterson.
yeah. And so the only real Catholics are you and me, and sometimes I'm not so sure about you, to be honest with you. This is the attitude that they have. This is preposterous. It's the magic disappearing Jew. You know, anytime you try to hold them accountable or something, somebody will say, "Oh, well, they're not real Jews." Well, wait a minute. Who are you to say who's a real Jew or not? That's precisely the issue. This is precisely the discussion we have to have if we're going to do something to counter the Jewish subversion of our cultures, whether it's Slovenia or the United States or Ireland or wherever it is. We have to have this discussion. We have to be able to talk about this honestly without fear of being thrown into jail for hate speech.
Yeah, and we have to point out their false arguments or their lies. For example, as I said it before, this is the first argument they use is this Notre Scotsman fallacy. They're not real Jews. Or if you watch the interview from between Lex Fridman and Kanye West, he tried to emphasize that these are real Jews, but they're individuals. This is the
Right.
second argument they're going.
It's all individuals. There's no
Yeah,
such thing. It's like nominalism. There's no category called Jew, unless you're saying Jews are all geniuses and they all have high IQs and they're all victims. And by the way, make the check out to this Jewish organization when the German people have to pay reparations payments. So suddenly it disappears. It's a shell game. You know, that's
yeah,
dishonest. It's dishonest.
and that notion, that concept of Jews being hyper intelligent, has been promoted by a scholar, a scientist, an academic, Jordan B. Peterson, for a while. Now, I remember he went to Stefan Molyneux's stream and he tried to promote this thing that Ashkenazi Jews had 115 average IQ, which is 15 points above whites, other whites, or
Wait, I
whatever.
thought that they're not white. Wait a minute, Jordan. Are Jews white? We have to answer this question.
It's preposterous. And even Stefan Molyneux said to him back then that yeah, the Jews may be the Ashkenazi Jews may be better on verbal IQ, which seems logical and it makes sense because a lot of them are authors and writers and so forth. This
Yeah,
makes sense.
because they control the publishing industry. That's why they're authors
Yeah.
and writers. There's a three-word refutation of the myth of Jewish intelligence. It's Yuval Noah Harari. All you have to do is say three words, and you have refuted the myth of Jewish intelligence. If there's ever an ignoramus when it comes to any type of abstract thinking or philosophical thought, it is this guy Harari. Read chapter 2 of the Jewish Revolutionaries. No, I'm sorry. Read chapter 2. I'm confusing my books. Read chapter 2 of Logos Rising, and you will get all of the gory details about how stupid this guy is and can't think his way out of a paper bag. But if you control the publishing industry, you go to any bookshop in London and his books are all over the place. This is why he's considered smart. Anybody can see through his stupid arguments, but when the publishing industry wants to promote him, then it becomes he's automatically a genius.
Yeah, he's been promoted through this their media as this super intellectual historian. I don't know what, but yeah. Whenever I admit it, I never read any of his books.
I did. I read *Sapiens*.
Wow.
It is the dumbest book I've ever read. I mean, it's right up there with The Four Atheists in terms of moronic arguments. You know, I read the book. That's why I wrote the chapter beginning with him in Logos Rising. We have to deal. Look, if you want to talk about what Jews are good at, read Heinrich Graetz, the father of Jewish historiography, who said that the one thing that Polish Jews learned from studying the Talmud was how to cheat people. That's what they're good at, because the Talmud teaches them to do that. If you want to go into the background of this animosity between Jews and black people in America, you need to look into the way those store owners in Harvard cheated the black people that came in repeatedly over and over and over again, and thought it was a joke and made fun of them and bragged about it. Don't take my word. Read the autobiography of Irving Horowitz, who was a sociologist from Rutgers. His father owned a hardware store in Harlem during the 1930s. This is exactly what he talks about: cheating the Schwarzes. Cheating the Schwarzes is a sport. It's a sport for the Jews, and they laugh at them. He talked about Christmas bulbs. It was especially good because you cheated them. You tested their Christmas bulbs, and they said, "Oh, your bulb is burned out." It was perfectly good. They put it in, and they resold it to them after they took their good Christmas bulbs, and it was even better because you're making fun of Christmas as well. This created the Harlem riots of 1937. And at that point, Theodore LaGuardia has to come in and say, "Oh, it's black and white." No, it's not black and white. It's black and Jewish. And that's exactly what's going on right now with Kanye and Kyrie and all these people. Anyway, Alesh, I'm starting to hallucinate. Okay? I don't want to keep you. I don't want to keep you up late. You got to go to bed, even though
I really do. I really do, because if I don't sleep enough, then I'll get fat, and it's not good for me. I'll get
yeah,
hungry in the morning too.
yeah.
So, anyways, thank you, Doc, for coming again, for accepting my invitation. It's really an honor. So, thanks for everything. I hope everything goes well with you. You can all watch Dr. E. Michael Jones on Cozy TV from now on, if I understood.
Yeah, as of tomorrow, we're going on Cozy. Also, if you want to buy that book where I expose Harari for the fraud that he is, go to culturewars.com. Okay? Don't go
Yeah.
to Google. It's run by Israeli intelligence operatives whose job is to keep you stupid. Go to culturewars.com.
So you have, for the audience that doesn't know you, you have to read at least two of Doctor's books, Libido Dominandi and Jewish Revolutionary Spirit. And as the Doctor said, you can go to their site, theculturewars.com, and you'll get to know everything from there on. So thanks once again, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Hasta la
All the
vista.
best. Hasta la vista. Bye.